Okay, this is the homework help video for Honors Math 3, Unit 5, Worksheet 5, and I'm going to do question number 3. So let me zoom in here a little bit. So for question number 3, so I'm going to do this on graph paper. So I have h of x equals the square root of x plus 2 minus 3. So I'm going to rewrite that to put it into the graphing form. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 to the other side. And so then that would be y plus 3, and then equals the square root of x plus 2. Okay, so then for graphing this, I want to find my start and my stretch. So for my start point, so I'm going to do alphabetical order, x before y, and then opposite on both. So I'm adding 2, so I'm going to use negative 2. And then I have plus 3, so then the opposite of that is going to be negative 3. And then for my stretch, it's going to be equal to 1 because the coefficient there is 1. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and do my graph. So I'm going to go to negative 2, negative 3. And then I have a stretch of 1, so up 1 over 1. And then I need to have a third point for accuracy. So I'm going to let x equal some number that I can take the square root of. So when I look at this, if I let x be 1, for example, 1 plus 2 is 3, and I don't know the square root of that. So I'm trying to figure out a value for x that when I add 2, I can square root it. So I'm going to go ahead and let x equal 2, because 2 plus 2 is 4, and I can square root that. So I'm going to let x equal 2. So I'm looking at this equation here, and I'm going to replace x with 2. So 2 plus 2, and then minus 3. So I'm going back to the original and replacing x with 2. So then I have the square root of 4, which is 2, and then 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So then that means my ordered pair is when x was 2, my y value was negative 1. So then I'm going to go ahead and graph that over here. So I'm going to go to where x is 2 and y is negative 1. And I know I'm going to have to find my x-intercept, so before I graph and connect this, I want to be able to find my x-intercept accurately. So I'm not going to connect this right away. I'm going to figure out what that is next. Okay. So for part A though, let's see, so we need domain and range. So let me go ahead and find that. So for my domain, so my graph is left comma right. So the farthest left it goes is negative 2. And then it will go forever as soon as I graph it. So from negative 2 to infinity. And then for my range, so bottom comma top, so the lowest it goes is here, so that lowest y value is negative 3. And then it, again, once I get it graphed, it will go upwards forever. Very slowly, but it will go upwards forever. Okay. And then for part B, I'm going to find my x-intercept, so I'm going to go ahead and do this by hand. So for my x-intercept, I want y to equal 0 in order to solve for x. So I'm going to go to here. So I'm going to replace y with 0. So I'll have 0 plus 3. And so that will be 3. And then to get rid of a square root, I want to square both sides. And then subtract 2. So x equals 7, so I have an x-intercept. When x is 7, y is 0. Extend that a little bit. And so then when I graph it, I'm going to go ahead and connect and pass through 7. Okay, and then there's my graph completely. Okay, and then for my y-intercept, So I'm going to jump around a little bit here. So for my y-intercept, I'm going to let x equal 0. So I'm going to use my original equation here. So for my y-intercept, I will have y equals the square root of 0 plus 2 and then minus 3. So that would be the square root of 2 minus 3. I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator to approximate that. And that's negative 1.58 or negative 1.6. Okay. All right, and then for D, they want me to find the open interval where h is increasing. So the open interval where h is increasing, so if I look at h of x, it is always increasing, so it's going to be increasing on its domain, but because it says open, that means I need to use parentheses. So my function is increasing from left to right, so starting at negative 2 and then going to infinity, but I need to use parentheses on the negative 2 because it says the open interval. Okay. And then for E, they're asking for the average rate of change from negative 1 to 7. So for that, so for my average rate of change, I'm going to use that formula. So f of b minus f of a. So f of 7 minus f of negative 1 all over 7 minus negative 1. And so then that would give me, let me just write that again and combine my bottom here. So 7 minus negative 1 is 8. So I find f of 7. So for f of 7, I'm going to just substitute it into my equation. Okay, so I'm just going to do that right down here. So to find f of 7, I'm going to replace x with 7. And then work that out. So 7 plus 2 is 9, and then the square root of 9 is 3, and then 3 minus 3 is 0. And then I'm going to do the same thing again with negative 1. Let's scoop this up. So then now I'm going to find h of negative 1. So I know I used f here, but my function was h. So technically these should be h's. And so now I'm going to use the same equation again and replace x with negative 1. So negative 1 plus 2, square root of 1 is 1, and 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So then I have 0 minus negative 2, so 0 plus 2, and then all over 8, and so 2 over 8 is 1/4. And then there's my average rate of change. And that was the last of that one. And there's number 3.